Scariest heart attack is the one nobody sees coming. You can have normal cholesterol, normal blood pressure, you can exercise, you can be lean and have never smoked, and your first sign of heart disease can still be a heart attack. That is what makes this disease so dangerous, not just because it kills, but because it can stay silent for years. Heart disease is still the #1 killer worldwide. In the United States, about 805,000 heart attacks happen each year, with about 605,000 being a first heart attack. Sometimes, the very first sign is the heart attack itself. That's what's most shocking, because they looked and felt normal. They thought normal meant safe. And here's the part that makes this even more dangerous. Most people who experience this don't feel anything wrong beforehand. No warning sign, no clear signal, nothing that tells them to slow down or get checked. They continue their normal routine, completely unaware that something is already developing inside their arteries. And by the time it finally shows itself, it's not a symptom, it's an event. And that false sense of safety is where the real danger begins. Most people believe heart attacks come with warnings, chest pain, shortness of breath, something that tells you to act. But what if the most dangerous ones don't follow that pattern? What if the real risk is building quietly, without any clear signal, until the moment it suddenly becomes life-threatening? That's what I want to show you today. I've spent decades treating patients who did everything they were told. They took their medications, they followed the advice, they believed they were managing their risk, and yet, some of them still ended up facing a heart attack without any prior warning. This is not about fear. This is about understanding something deeper that most people are never told. Because the kind of plaque that causes many heart attacks is not always the large blockage people imagine. It can be smaller, less obvious, and still dangerous. It may not restrict blood flow enough to cause symptoms, but under the right conditions, it can suddenly rupture, triggering a clot that blocks the artery in an instant. That is how a heart attack can happen without warning, even when everything seems normal. I want you to picture someone sitting in front of me in clinic. They look healthy. They tell me their numbers are fine. Cholesterol looks normal. Blood pressure looks controlled. They exercise. They eat reasonably well. And they feel completely safe. That belief is very common. The idea that if your numbers look good, your heart must be protected. But this is where many people get caught off guard, because appearance of health does not always reflect what is happening inside the arteries. Heart disease can stay silent for years. There are no clear warning signs, no obvious symptoms. And in many cases, the first symptom is the heart attack itself. That is what makes it so dangerous. People are not ignoring symptoms. There simply are none to notice. They are living their normal life, believing everything is fine, while something is slowly developing beneath the surface. Most people imagine heart attacks come from one large blockage, a severe narrowing that builds up over time until it finally shuts things down. And those types of blockages do exist, but they usually create symptoms first. Chest pressure, shortness of breath, discomfort with activity, signals that something is wrong. The problem is, most heart attacks do not come from those large, obvious blockages. Instead, they come from something much less visible, non-obstructive plaque. Now, this is the part most people have never heard explained clearly, because when something doesn't cause symptoms, we tend to assume it's not serious. But that assumption can be misleading. What looks small and harmless on the surface can behave very differently inside the artery. And understanding that difference changes everything. This type of plaque does not block enough blood flow to cause symptoms. It sits quietly in the artery wall. It does not trigger warning signs. It does not affect how you feel day to day. So from the outside, everything appears normal. But inside, that plaque can still be unstable. And this is where things change very quickly. That hidden plaque can suddenly rupture. When it ruptures, the body reacts immediately. A blood clot forms at that exact spot, and that clot can block the artery within minutes. Not slowly, not over time, in minutes. That is how a heart attack can happen without warning, even in someone who felt completely fine just hours before. This is also why routine tests can give a false sense of reassurance. A stress test does not confirm the absence of plaque. An ECG does not confirm it. An echo does not confirm it. Even a calcium scan only shows calcified plaque, not all types. So, a person can go through testing, be told everything looks okay, and still have non-obstructive plaque that remains undetected. That gap between what we assume and what is actually present is where the real risk lives. Waiting for symptoms does not work in this situation, because by the time symptoms appear, the event may already be happening, and that is why the first heart attack should never be the first warning. Now think about what is happening inside the artery, long before any test shows a problem. This is where the process actually begins. It starts with the inner lining of the blood vessels, called the endothelium. This layer is responsible for keeping blood flowing smoothly. It produces nitric oxide, which helps the vessels relax and stay flexible. When this system is working well, the artery protects itself. But when the endothelium becomes damaged, everything starts to change. Nitric oxide production drops. The vessel becomes less flexible. Inflammation begins to increase. And this creates the conditions where plaque can start to develop and progress over time. This damage does not happen all at once. It builds slowly, often without any symptoms. There are several factors that contribute to this damage. Smoking directly injures the endothelium. Alcohol can also impair its function. High-fat meals can temporarily reduce how well the vessels respond. Metabolic stress adds further strain on the system. These are not always dramatic events. They are repeated small stresses that gradually weaken the vessel lining. As this process continues, plaque begins to form and grow. And even when it is not large enough to block blood flow, it can still be unstable. That is the key point. The danger is not only how big the plaque is, but how vulnerable it is to rupture. And that vulnerability is strongly linked to the condition of the endothelium and the level of inflammation present. At the same time, there are factors that increase the likelihood of plaque being present in the first place. Age over 40 makes it more likely. Family history adds to that risk. Conditions like diabetes increase the burden. Higher levels of ApoB, lipoprotein A, and LDL all increase the chance that plaque is developing within the arteries, even if a person feels completely well. So again, a person may look healthy, they may feel healthy, but these internal processes can still be active. And because routine testing does not always detect early or non-calcified plaque, many people remain underscreened. They rely on normal test results as proof that nothing is wrong, when in reality, the process may already be underway. This is why waiting for symptoms becomes such a problem, because the underlying changes are happening quietly, long before anything is felt. And once that plaque becomes unstable, the timeline changes from years to minutes. That is, the shift people do not see coming. Now let's shift to what actually changes this process before it reaches that breaking point. Because once you see how this process actually works, the question is no longer whether something is wrong. The question becomes what you can do about it before it turns into an event. And this is where the focus shifts, not to reacting after damage is done, but to changing what's happening early, while there is still time. Because once you understand that plaque progression is driven by endothelial damage and reduced nitric oxide, the focus becomes very clear. It is not about waiting for a symptom. It is about stabilizing what is already there and reducing the chance of rupture. This is where many people misunderstand the goal. The goal is not only to look healthy on the outside. The goal is to improve what is happening inside the vessel wall. When endothelial function improves, nitric oxide production increases. The artery becomes more flexible. Inflammation is reduced, and that directly lowers the conditions that make plaque unstable. Exercise plays a direct role in this. It improves endothelial function and supports repair of the vessel lining. More importantly, when exercise intensity is progressive, the benefit becomes stronger. High-intensity intervals can provide more efficient improvement compared to low effort alone. But the progression matters. The body adapts step by step, and that adaptation supports better vascular function over time. At the same time, dietary patterns influence the same system. Removing high-fat animal-based foods reduces ongoing injury to the endothelium. A low-fat protocol has been used specifically for plaque stabilization. This is not about short-term change. It is about reducing repeated stress on the vessel wall so that it can recover and function properly. Certain foods support this recovery process. Greens contribute to nitric oxide production through dietary nitrates. These nitrates are converted into nitric oxide with the help of oral bacteria, which is an important part of the process. Balsamic vinegar has been associated with supporting endothelial recovery. Pomegranate supports vascular health. Garlic contributes to better vascular function. Beans also support overall vascular health. These are not random additions. they all connect back to improving endothelial function. As endothelial health improves, the environment inside the artery becomes more stable. Plaque is less likely to rupture. That is the key outcome. Stabilization reduces the immediate risk, even if plaque is already present. And this is where monitoring also becomes important. CT angiography can detect non-calcified plaque and track changes over time. Advanced plaque analysis can show the type and burden of plaque more clearly. This gives a more accurate picture than assuming everything is fine based on limited testing. Visual detection is stronger than assumption, because at the end of the day, prevention has to happen before the first event. Waiting until something is felt is already too late in many cases, and the first heart attack should never be the first warning. The first step is to stop relying on how you feel as a measure of safety. Feeling normal does not mean your arteries are clear. The goal is to act before any event happens, not after. So, the focus shifts from reaction to prevention. Start with visibility. Do not assume your arteries are fine based on routine tests alone. A stress test, ECG, or echo does not confirm the absence of plaque. A calcium scan only shows calcified plaque, not all types. If you want a clearer picture, visual detection matters. CT angiography can detect non-calcified plaque and show what is actually present. This allows you to move from guessing to knowing. Next, address the internal environment of the artery. The priority is to support endothelial function. This means reducing the factors that damage it and strengthening the factors that repair it. Avoid repeated injury. Smoking damages the endothelium. Alcohol can impair it. High-fat meals can reduce its function. Metabolic stress adds further strain. Reducing these exposures helps limit ongoing damage. At the same time, actively support recovery. Exercise is one of the most direct tools. It improves endothelial function and helps restore nitric oxide production. Start at a level that feels manageable, then increase intensity gradually. As your body adapts, the benefit becomes stronger. Consistency matters more than short bursts. Now, focus on dietary patterns that support the same goal. Removing high-fat animal-based foods reduces ongoing injury to the vessel lining. A low-fat approach has been used for plaque stabilization. This helps create an environment where the artery can recover instead of being repeatedly stressed. Add supportive foods that connect directly to vascular function. Greens provide dietary nitrates that convert to nitric oxide. This process depends on oral bacteria, which play a key role in that conversion. Balsamic vinegar supports endothelial recovery. Pomegranate supports vascular health. Garlic contributes to vascular function. Beans support overall vessel health. These are simple additions, but they work through the same pathway. Also look at risk markers. Age over 40 increases the likelihood of plaque. Family history adds to that risk. Diabetes increases the burden. Higher levels of ApoB, lipoprotein A, and LDL increase the likelihood that plaque is present. These are signals to take action earlier, not later. Finally, track change when possible. CT angiography can be used not only to detect plaque, but to follow how it changes over time. Advanced plaque analysis gives a clearer view of type and burden. This allows you to see whether your approach is helping stabilize the situation. This is not about waiting for a warning sign. It is about making sure the first warning never comes as a heart attack. When I think about the patients I've treated over the years, the ones that stay with me the most are not always the sickest ones. It's the ones who looked completely fine. The ones who sat across from me and said, "Doctor, I thought I was okay." And they meant it. They weren't ignoring their health. They were doing what they believed was right. They trusted the numbers. They trusted how they felt. And no one had ever told them that those things don't always tell the full story. That's the part that's hard to forget. Because a heart attack like this doesn't give you a second chance to prepare. It doesn't come with a warning you can respond to. It happens in a moment. And everything changes from that point forward. Not just physically, but emotionally. For the patient, for their family, for the people around them who never saw it coming either. I'm not telling you this to create fear. I'm telling you this because understanding changes outcomes. When you realize that heart disease can stay silent, that plaque can exist without symptoms, that routine reassurance is not always enough, you start to see your health differently. You stop waiting for something to feel wrong. You start paying attention earlier. I've seen what happens on both sides of this. I've seen people who arrive after the event, shocked, trying to understand how it happened. And I've seen people who took that quiet risk seriously before anything went wrong. People who chose to look deeper, to understand what was actually happening inside their arteries, and to make changes early. Those are very different paths, and they lead to very different outcomes. There's a moment where this becomes personal, where it's no longer just information, it's a decision. To either assume things are fine because nothing feels wrong, or to recognize that silent does not mean safe. That moment matters more than most people realize, because the truth is simple. The first heart attack should never be the first warning. Let's bring this back to what matters most. A heart attack does not always come with warning signs. You can feel normal, your numbers can look acceptable, and still, plaque can be present, developing quietly over time. Most heart attacks do not come from large blockages that give symptoms. They come from hidden, non-obstructive plaque that can rupture suddenly and form a clot within minutes. That is why relying only on how you feel, or on limited testing, can create a false sense of safety. What matters is understanding what is happening beneath the surface. Routine tests do not confirm the absence of plaque. Calcium scans do not show all plaque types. And waiting for symptoms means you may already be too late. The focus has to shift toward early detection, supporting endothelial function, and stabilizing plaque before it becomes dangerous. So here is the question I want you to think about. Are you relying on how you feel, or are you actually looking at what is happening inside your arteries? If this helped you see your heart health in a different way, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for clear, simple guidance focused on protecting your heart before problems begin. This information is for educational purposes only, and does not replace medical advice. Always speak with your doctor before making any changes to your health routine.